a few minutes of our meeting just to wrap up and share a few more pieces of information with you. As you know, we like to survey parents and families on a fairly regular basis and ask you lots of questions through surveys, through polls, through these kinds of things. And so last month we had a poll that was about kind of student employment, career services, those kinds of things. And Maria is fantastic. She followed up with all the folks where their offices would have been impacted by the poll question, and as a result got some information that we want to share with you about student employment.
So last month's poll, which about 125 parents responded to, asked if your student had a job or internship, which corresponded with this presentation. And almost half of you said that your student doesn't have a job or internship right now, but is searching. And so we reached out to Student Employment Services, to Frank Martinez, who works over there, and he sent us this guide, which is uploaded online already, and for those of you here can have a copy, which really gives a lot of great information about all the different kinds of employment, from work study to non-work study, how your student can find those positions, and other things to know about payment and things like that. So check that out. It's got great information, and hopefully it'll help your student find a job or internship.
This is one of the things we love most about parent and family interaction at CSU is when we get the information and we share it with offices, they say, well, we have some information. How can we share that with parents and families? And so it's a great way for us to be able to kind of follow up on what families are telling us with more information about resources here on campus. So with our last 15 or so minutes, I think we want to talk a little bit about the upcoming fall break, kind of what that looks like, and share a little bit of information about fall commencement. So I'll turn it over to Jody to talk a little bit about fall break, and then we'll close with commencement.
All right. So students are crawling to get to fall break. At Colorado State, for lots of different reasons, we don't have a break from August all the way until November. And that's a long time. Students are really pushing their way to get through to the end of the semester. And we have a full week off for fall break. And we want to sort of talk about that and help you prepare for that, and be ready for when your student comes home. And we've got experts in the room, so want to share the wisdom in the room, of course. But from my experience, I think it's important to have a conversation with your student before they come home, to find out where they are in sort of their exhaustion, and where they are in terms of what they want to do over fall break. I think many times families have been missing their students so much. They build up this anticipation and expectation about this glorious fall break over Thanksgiving and all the fun things the family's going to do together, and it can be a mismatch with students who really just want to sleep for 7 straight days, or they want to go out with their friends and see all their friends who are also home for fall break. And so it can be not a glorious time if you don't have conversations before your students come home about what your expectations are and what their expectations are. I think it can be a surprise when you see your student for the first time if you haven't seen them all fall semester. The dark circles under their eyes. They may be sick because they've been burning the midnight oil. Their sleep patterns are very disruptive. They may stay up till 3 in the morning because that's just what they do when they're in college. And so it's strange when all the lights go off at home at 10 o'clock at night and they're up for another 4 or 5 hours, but then they want to sleep until noon because that's what their body does when they're in college. And so I think rather than passing judgment and rather than forcing students for that 1 week to adapt to the family pattern, it becomes more of a negotiation and a compromise. And if there's some foundational things that are very important to your family, if you feel strongly about them attending your worship service, or if you've got a family gathering planned and you want to make sure your student is there, you need to let them know that, because they won't necessarily remember that as they're coming home. I think another thing is many of them, what will be weighing on their minds is they've got the final stretch to finish out the semester. So there's exams coming up right around the corner. There's papers that are due right around the corner. And so there's some stress and pressure for students to not only recover from the semester, but also get up enough energy to finish out strong. and so it's encouraging them and continuing to give the belief statements that you believe in them and you love them no matter what, and that you just want them to do their best. It's hard for students to turn around if they're really doing poorly, to really dramatically change their grade in the last stretch. And so really, if they're struggling right now, the message is, what are you learning from this, and what will you do differently next semester? And those are positive messages to share with them. And, you know, that foundational that you always will love them. I think many students are afraid to talk to their families if they haven't done as well as they had hoped. And so opening the door and letting them know that you want to listen to them and you want to give them advice is critical. Other thoughts, wisdom in the room, things that have worked well for you, or stories from previous fall breaks. And we've got student video folks who are here helping us run the webcams. So if you have advice too, I'd be curious. Anyone?
If I think back to when I was a student, which has been a few years ago, I recognize, my parents were great about knowing that I was tired and knowing that really fall break was meant to be a break, but it was also a time, you know, for celebration and a lot of family gatherings. And so what I remember most about fall breaks is sleeping, being excited to be home, sleeping, and always having a ton of good food around. Because at this point in the semester, I think, especially from when I was in school, the dining services at CSU are phenomenal. And at the end of the day, they're not home-cooked meals, right? They're not what you're used to growing up. They're not the same meals that your parents would have cooked for you, your family members would have shared with you. And so I just remember every time I came home, both of my parents, I have a split household, and so I remember both of my parents saying, well, what do you want? What can I plan for while you're here? And so it was always sort of a mini celebration when I came home, because my parents were like, what's your favorite food? Can I make that while you're here? And I'm like, yes, you can. So just having that, and family members saying, you know, I know you're tired, but here, let's eat together and let's hang out and let's do what you want to do. And there's going to be a couple of family responsibilities while you're here, was helpful for me.
I think something that I've noticed with my friends just talking to us recently and talking to each other recently, and we're all grad students, but one thing that we had all talked about when we first went home from fall break is toward the end of that week saying, okay, it's time to go back home. And that saying home meaning school was kind of crushing to our parents. So preparing for that and knowing that might come, and not that home is any less home at all, but there's also this other place that they've set up and they've been comfortable too. So it's not anything that home isn't home anymore, more so just it's a different home.
And in some ways a good sign that you've connected to your university.
I would venture to say that there are probably, especially freshmen, if you have your first freshman, you know, your first fall semester, it's your oldest child. We are actually on number 3 being freshmen, but, well, I was thinking my personal, what I probably did to our oldest daughter was ask too many questions, like inundate them with, well, what are you doing and how'd you do it, and what's your, you know, how's everything going, and, you know, just sort of intensely asking too many questions. I'm sure I did that. So, as a point of reference for any freshman parents.
So your third is benefiting from
definitely.
that experience, right?
And she's also closer. I mean, we didn't live that close at the time to the first ones, but now being that we're fairly close here, obviously, or we wouldn't be sitting here. That's a difference too.
Any other pieces of advice, words of wisdom?
I think it's pretty safe to not lay expectations on people. In this case, kids coming home.
Katie's pretty much told us she's going to stay at her apartment. And her good excuse is that we have dial-up in Livermore, so if she wants to get her work done, she's going to stay, you know, on campus and such. And so we're just going to say, you know, what do you want? What can we do for you? You know, that type of thing. So, and you got to remember, she doesn't have her room to come home to anymore either. We've got 2 bedrooms, but, you know.
Right, so we have a number of families who have been displaced from the High Park fire, and the Fialcos were, lost their home and everything while Katie was studying abroad. Right, right. So she learned about all of this and was watching from very far away. So for Katie and for many, my son's the same way. For fall break, he'll come home for Thanksgiving. Otherwise, he's staying in his apartment and sleeping there because that's where his bed is. So you adapt and you shift to what those expectations are. Yeah. All right. Fall commencement.
Okay, so to close this session, I know it's not necessarily applicable to all parents and families, but we do want to make sure that we're sharing this information sort of far and wide. We've had questions about fall commencement, when, where, how, all of those sorts of things with commencement. And so handed out here in the room and also posted on our website for the folks who are at home is some information about fall commencement. CSU operates under a very decentralized model for graduation. Each college has a separate commencement ceremony. And so if there's one thing that you could take away from this conversation, whether your student is graduating this semester or in 4 years, is that the commencement website, it's commencement.colostate.edu, is going to be your best resource for finding out all of the logistical information, as well as information on webcasting if you're unable to make it to Fort Collins for the actual ceremony. So all of the information is listed on commencement. It's got frequently asked questions. It's got information about visiting Fort Collins, webcast information, grad pack information, and then again those individual ceremony logistics will be located on that website. And I think they have graduation dates up until like 2016 or something like that. Like there's a ton of information on that website. So for planning purposes, the commencement website is going to be the best place for parents and families to review. For students, there are certain things that they have to do in order to be eligible to graduate. They have to make sure that they've met all the requirements for their specific major, that they filled out the intent to graduate form, and that everything is kind of in line from an academic perspective. And so the one place that I would recommend your students to is the registrar's website. And if you go to the registrar's website and click on students, there's a tab specifically for graduation, and it talks about the forms and about all the things that students need to make sure, kind of that check sheet of here are all the things that you need to do to make sure that you're eligible to walk across the stage. So once students complete that intent to graduate form, they'll start receiving information from their individual college about their commencement ceremonies and about all the things that need to be done within their specific college about those things. So that very first step of saying, yes, I intend to graduate at the end of the semester is going to be key to them receiving information and taking all the proper steps to graduate on time. Lastly, we know families are traveling from all over the place to come to graduation ceremonies. And if you are traveling into town, we hope you'll use the Ram Fam Association Business Directory as a resource as you plan your stay. There's hotels, there's restaurants, there's all kinds of things that are listed on there that may be helpful to you as you plan your trip to Fort Collins. And as always, we want to let them know that you found their business through the Ram Fam Association, because we'd like to continue to partner with these businesses to provide great resources for families in the future. So again, this information is listed here. It's also on our website, and so we hope you find it useful. And congratulations to those families whose students are graduating this December. It's a pretty awesome experience. You now know about the Career Center, and so hopefully between the two, your students will get jobs with benefits and graduate without any hiccups. So wrapping up this Ram Fam Association meeting, we won't meet again until February, where we'll be talking about tuition and budget issues. Sort of from now until February, our president is really great about updating us about the budget process and about things that are happening from a legislative perspective and things that will impact our budget and tuition within the state. And so we'll be sending out those emails to parents and families, as we always do, in emails, just to kind of let you know what's going on from that perspective. He always posts budget information on his website, so president.colostate.edu. There's a link for budget information, so you can always check that for updates as well. And then we'll come come together in February and talk about, okay, here's what we know about the budget process so far. Here's what we know about tuition so far. And here's some important information on financial aid and what that will look like for students who are applying for financial aid for the next year. So we hope you'll join us in February, and we hope you have a lovely fall break and winter break with your students in the meantime.